Welcome to our discussion on US politics and the new Cold War on China, driven by corporate monopolies and strategic maneuvers.
I'm all ears. This seems like a wild cocktail of monopolies, geopolitics, and high stakes economic policies.
Absolutely. At the heart of it, the US system is designed to protect corporate monopolies. Big players like Silicon Valley's tech giants who are fearful of Chinese competitors gaining ground.
Yep, and it's interesting because while they champion free markets outwardly, they actually weaponize the system to maintain their monopoly power, right?
Exactly, yeah. The system effectively ensures that companies like, say, big tech stay dominant even if it means sidelining smaller or foreign competitors.
Exactly. And that, in turn, feeds into a broader strategy, a sort of second Cold War against China. The US is not only protecting its markets, but is also actively trying to curb China's technological and economic rise.
Right, it's like a both and scenario where you're safeguarding your domestic interests while trying to slow down a rival that could mess up the balance.
Speaking of rivals, I noticed figures like Peter Thiel have been vocal, proclaiming competition is for losers. It's a pretty bold, even controversial stance.
Yes, Thiel's mantra definitely encapsulates the ideology of monopolistic practices when he says that it frames competition as a kind of threat rather than a driver of innovation.
Yeah, but isn't that argument a bit short sighted? I mean, competition can push companies to innovate and improve. Wouldn't you say that stifling competition might actually slow down overall progress?
Well, that's a fair point. But here's the twist. By maintaining these monopolies, the US government can, in a way, consolidate power in trade, technology, and even global infrastructure.
I see what you mean. So, while it might indeed limit some aspects of innovation, it guarantees a kind of control over strategic assets, like controlling access to global tech markets and even key infrastructures such as the Panama Canal.
Exactly. And it's not just tech. Think about the corporate lobbyists and donors who wield immense influence over policy decisions. They often push for regulations that favor their monopolistic practices.
Right, and we see that influence reflected in how antitrust cases are handled, or more accurately, not handled. The Trump administration, for example, opposed antitrust cases that might have cracked these monopolies wide open.
Yes, and that ties directly into another major theme: money buys US politics. When large sums are funneled into lobbying and political donations, it tilts the system toward protecting those very interests that benefit from monopolies.
Yeah, for sure. And it doesn't stop there. We see a clear connection to the US's strategic posture against China. By bolstering domestic corporations, the government ostensibly prepares for a global geopolitical showdown, a Cold War on economic fronts, and ultimately on technology.
Right, and the measures are concrete too. From banning or restricting Chinese tech firms like TikTok to imposing chip export restrictions under Biden, it's all part of this broader strategy to contain China's innovation capacities.
True, and I found it particularly intriguing when the discussion shifted to industrial policy, like China's Made in China 2025 plan, which has pushed China into industries like commercial aircraft manufacturing. That move challenges traditional US strongholds in sectors such as aerospace.
Yeah, that's a key point. US politicians even lobby to ban Chinese firms like Comac, trying to preserve the dominance of American companies like Boeing.
Speaking of Boeing, there's also an argument made about how finance and management practices, like prioritized stock buybacks over R&D, led to a decline in innovation. It's almost like finance bros overran the engineering spirit.
Exactly. It's like an internal sabotage by focusing on short term financial metrics rather than investing in long term research. And then you've got privatized equity also getting a bad rap, often accused of looting America.
Yes, that criticism adds to the narrative where economic elites not only control politics, but also, in a way, undermine the overall health of industries. It's an interesting, if troubling, dynamic.
Absolutely. And we have to consider how all these elements, corporate lobbying, restrictive policies, and even state actions, interlock. They form a kind of protective web that secures domestic monopolies while simultaneously setting the stage for a structured confrontation with China.
That's a tangled web for sure. I like that analogy, a tangled web. It reminds me of how the US seems to wield its economic power like a double-edged sword, defending monopolies while leveraging them to restrict competitors internationally.
Yup, and this dual approach is underlined by some provocative rhetoric, such as the notion that a unipolar world is not just a market ideal, but also a strategic goal for Silicon Valley and US policymakers.
Precisely, and that idea is challenged by, say, critics who wonder if such a concentrated approach might leave the US vulnerable to new forms of economic disruption. It's like putting all your eggs in one, well, very expensive basket.
Exactly. And those critics argue that in the long run, stifling competition might actually diminish the resilience of the economy.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. And then there's the whole aspect of infrastructure control. The discussion mentions moves like BlackRock buying up key ports, and even the controversial stance on the Panama Canal. It underscores the broader theme of controlling global commerce.
Right. That's one of the dramatic moments in this narrative, seeing how these financial giants and government policies converge to control assets of strategic importance. It's like chess, where every move is designed to keep the opponent in check.
I find that analogy fitting. A global chess game where monopolistic moves and political decisions are all intertwined. But isn't it a bit dangerous to mix corporate interests so directly with national security priorities?
It definitely is dangerous, and that's where the risk of corruption and bribery escalates. When political decisions can be swayed by monetary influence, the integrity of national policy is compromised for profit.
It's a slippery slope. Absolutely. And that brings us full circle. US politics in this context is less about democratic ideals and more about preserving the hegemonic status of powerful entities, even if it stifles competition or harms consumers.
Right, and then we also see how the use of tariffs and export restrictions, like those on chips, are twofold. They serve as both protective measures for domestic companies and as punitive actions against China's technological ambitions.
Yep, it's all very strategic. But I have to wonder, if you focus too much on protectionism, doesn't that backfire by reducing overall competitiveness on the global stage?
That's a solid critique. Overprotecting monopolies might lead to stagnation at a time when global innovation is accelerating elsewhere. Still, the government seems to view it as a necessary sacrifice in a high-stakes ideological battle
Yeah, I
against
get
China.
that, though it's a risky long-term strategy. And the irony isn't lost either. While the US claims to promote free market values, it essentially crafts a controlled market designed only for a few major players.
Exactly. It's the juxtaposition of appearing competitive on the surface while, underneath, orchestrating a scenario that practically guarantees monopoly dominance.
That's three layers of complexity: cultural values, economic strategy, and geopolitical maneuvering. All converge to paint a picture of a system that's both sophisticated and deeply problematic.
Right on. To wrap it up, this narrative isn't just about monopolistic practices. It's about using those practices as tools in a broader geopolitical context, one where economic control directly translates to global influence.
Truly a multifaceted game. And with every move, the stakes only get higher, making it a fascinating, though concerning battle between protecting national interests and fostering a truly competitive global market.
Absolutely, and thanks for joining in this deep dive into the mechanics of how monopolies drive US politics and shape the new Cold War on China.
Thanks as well. It's been an engaging discussion, and I think we've peeled back several layers of a really complex issue.